we've got a new man at the helm in Chicago, and that's 76-year-old Tony La Russa. He's 9 years removed from managing, and he's officially skipper of one of the league's brightest young teams. We've already heard some stories about how this has ruffled some feathers of people in the organization, and it seems like a big factor leading to this hire was his relationship to owner Jerry Reinsdorf. Guys, how much does this positively or negatively, or even at all, affect the White Sox in their pursuit of becoming a real contender?
I think for me, I don't think this really makes a lot of sense, and it may stunt them a little bit because Tony La Russa, 76 years old, and at a certain point, I feel like you kind of got to be a player's coach. And when he was managing, the philosophies are different than it is now, and that's really what it is. Maybe he kind of changes things, and he's going to be like an analytics coach, but I just doubt that. As an old guy, you can't teach old dog new tricks, and I don't know. For me, that team is so young, so electric, and you bring in, this 76-year-old to go manage. I mean, look, he's had a ton of success. You definitely can't deny that. But I don't know. The old coaches, it's happened before. Davey Johnson, I think he was another guy came in, even though having a lot of success. When 30 years later, it's a different game. Even for La Russa, 10 years later, it's a different game. And right now, with such an electric young team, I just don't understand it.
I was baffled by this decision when I saw it come through on my phone on Twitter. I was shocked to see it, and I knew that La Russa had been rumored to have been linked to that job, and I hadn't heard a ton about it, but I was really, really surprised, and in particular, just at first that he would be interested in managing again, because when you're out for 9 years and you're retiring as the manager of a team that just won the World Series, what are you looking for? But again, he didn't have a ton of success in that other chair of working in the front office where Tony La Russa went. Teams did not tend to win. Maybe he wanted to try his hand again at being successful with something that he had been really good at. But I agree with you, because this is just it's what I've been stressing on this show when we're talking about baseball has been the organizational structure. If you are seeing a theme and a pattern in the way that I'm breaking down these things, good, because that's what I'm trying to convey. Teams with good organizational structure win. The Dodgers win. The Yankees win because they have very solid and sound organizational structure. And that, to me, is the worst part of this hire, because not everyone is on board. There is a rift already between the front office and the manager that they just brought in, because the front office didn't want to hire him and the owner went around the front office to hire the manager. So now, really, in essence, the front office reports to the manager, who reports to the owner. So you have screwed up your whole organizational structure already before we've even played a game. And that, to me, is the most disappointing and curious aspect of this whole hire, because we can talk about the whole time, and Andrew went on about how is he going to relate to the players, and we talked a little bit about this in the open. We were talking about the Rays, about today's baseball player who wants to know which decisions are being made and why they're being made. And it's hard for me to say, because I don't know how Tony La Russa is going to manage. He's going to be more analytically driven than he was in 2011, because he's going to have to be. That's how baseball works now, and there's just more of a focus and more information available. He's going to pay attention to it. I think Tony La Russa is a smart guy. He didn't become one of the greatest managers in baseball history by not being that way. So he'll pay attention to it. But is he going to do it in the way that players expect and players want? And that's the question, because is he going to be able to explain to them, yeah, it was the third time through the order that we didn't like? Is he going to be able to give them the information that they want in scouting reports and things? And that's not all him, but just is he going to be able to communicate with today's Major League Baseball player, not so much even on a personal level, but also in baseball language, which I think is in today's Major League Baseball a more difficult challenge. But to me, it's the biggest issue is the organizational structure that Jerry Reinsdorf has now circumvented and created a problem. And I'll tell you this right now, if things don't go well, there are going to be fingers pointed early on about, hey, we didn't hire this guy. We don't like him. There are some pretty big and hefty expectations that exist on the south side of Chicago, and we don't want to deal with that.
And let's not forget, La Russa's a guy who has the third most wins in MLB history. He's a Hall of Famer. What do we say if Chicago comes out looking even better than they did last season?
It would be, I mean, I wouldn't like, I do understand like in sports, it happens a lot where, you have a really young team and you bring in kind of like the grandfather figure and he's able to guide them to victory. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. It's just, I do think that Nick kind of hit it on the head. I don't really think this team, will do that because organizational structure, I think in baseball is really big. And this situation reminds me a little of in football, the Jets. I mean, like when you have all this maneuvering around, the owner picks one guy, the front office likes another guy, the owner goes over him. It's something that, I feel like for winning baseball teams, these teams, their front office and their owners are aligned together and they're able to make decisions together. And that's really how you create a successful baseball franchise.
And look, they are running a risk by doing this, and that doesn't mean that there can't be a reward, because when you look at the White Sox roster, they have Luis Robert and Eloy Jimenez and Lucas Giolito. Like, they have players, and they're a good team. Jose Abreu, who I didn't even get to. So at the end of the day, how much does a manager matter? And I think that that's part of this conversation, because I would argue not too much. Right? Like if you have a bunch of really good players, you're going to win games. And my issue is if things don't go well, how does that affect them? Because that's what you're most worried about. I think that if they can get off to a good start, if they win, no one's going to say anything. That's how sports works. That's how the organization works. And they might win as a product of the players that they have on the field because they have a very good roster. But if things don't go well, if you have some adversity, if this team doesn't, say, make the playoffs or is not any better than it was last year, you're going to be sitting there scratching your head saying, look, we didn't want this guy from a front office perspective. Tony La Russa is going to assume a bunch of power and say, hey, maybe we don't have the right players in place. There's going to be some finger pointing and some blame being placed by two sides that are sort of at war with each other. So I just think that's not the smartest way to operate as an organization, because inevitably you're going to face some adversity. And when you have two sides that are brought together in a forced marriage and sitting there saying, yeah, we didn't really want to work together in the first place, that's where tension can create. And when you have warring managers, staff, and front office, that generally doesn't breed a great organizational structure and breed winning.